annoyed by the seat of your pants. But people have asked me that before on YouTube, and I'm like, I'm just gonna ignore that. But when I did finally write my first book, which actually wasn't this book, it was again inspired by a dream. And for fun, I just started writing it. And I had to give myself like, oh, it's just for fun, like I'm just exploring whatever, because as soon as I'm like, it's a book and someone's gonna read it, I just saw this evil old man with a pipe, this old like white dude, and he's like, this is rubbish, it's all rubbish. I don't think he can read. I was gonna say.
What else did you know?
Sorry, I won't go there. But to get that image out of my head, that critic, I mean, you always hear you're your own worst critic. For me, it, like, there was a face and there was this old white dude. But to kill him and get rid of him, I had to be like, I'm doing this for fun, no one's ever going to read it, whatever. And shockingly enough, and this is, do not take this as the standard that you have to write by, I wrote,
they have a way of being stubborn and doing whatever they want. So even if I have an outline, they're not going to listen to me. However, if you're a pantser, you also have to be a really good editor because you will end up going through intensive revisions. That's actually where I'm at with the fourth book in this series. I now use a little bit of an outline before I start. I use the Save the Cat beat sheets that kind of gives me kind of a skeleton plan, so at least I know what the ending is going to be. But then I write and I just sort of let it happen. The characters come up with stuff. The end of the draft is terrible. And then I go back and I do a lot of the work you were describing after I have a first draft, where it's like, okay, who is this character and what are they after and how do they interact with this other character and what happened in their past that made them do that. But once I have that first draft in front of me, it's a lot easier for me to know what I'm even going for. Because if I have tried to plan it out in advance and it just ends up being wasted work for me. So.
when you can
Okay, so even if I were able to drink, I'd have to stop now. I've never done anything. I've never cut class. I've never been high in front of my parents. I've never crashed my car into a tree. Predictably, the game starts getting dirty. I've never sexted. I've never done it in my parents' bed. I've never done it in a car. I've never done it outside, someone says, and Trish and Daniel don't drink. The group starts chanting, do it, do it, and the two of them grin at each other and stumble off into the darkness to whoops and cheers. The icy fog that's been hovering in my chest congeals into a hard gray ball. Fine. I scooch closer to Mark. When he asks me to take a walk around the course, I agree. It's a nice night for a first kiss. Star-spangled sky, silver bangle of a crescent moon suspended over the trees. We sit silently at the edge of a sand trap, so close our legs are touching. Then Mark leans in to kiss me, and in the moment before his lips touch mine, my heart flutters. Maybe this will be magical. Maybe it will sweep me off my feet. But the moment passes, and my first kiss turns out to be just a lot of his tongue in my mouth, and all I can think is, I put up with it for a couple minutes in case it gets better. It doesn't.
The woods are dark, and my mother weaves dried blossoms into my hair. They have to be dried because there hasn't been a flower in over a year, not since the darkness spread, veiling our valley in shadow, which is why I'm being readied for him. I stand before my little brother Jasper, who is clasping his hands and observing my mother's handiwork. He is only 7, but still he knows what I am about to do. I'm wearing my mother's wedding dress. I was surprised it was such a perfect fit, for I am 17 and she was 20 when she wed my father. It used to be white, but the lace has a tinged yellow quality from age, and there are a few holes in places where moths or mice have chewed. But it's good enough, and we aren't people who need much. Mending the holes would be too much effort when I'm only going to be in the dress when eyes are lashed onto mine. Willow, can I speak with you? I nod. There isn't really anywhere we can go to find privacy, so we step over to my bed. Willow, what you're doing is honorable, but I don't think it's right. He's the only one who knows my secret. Now I regret him knowing because the look in his eyes is making me feel guilty. His jaw is strong and dusted with brown stubble. Somewhere in between the sun and the darkness.
It's called The Revenge. My phone was ringing. I rolled over and knocked half the stuff off my nightstand before finding it. Hello? Tony. I sat up, rubbing my eyes and yawning. Hope? What time is it? It's 9 o'clock, you jerk. Were you asleep already? I glanced at the bedside clock and then at myself, lying on top of my sheets fully clothed. No. Hope sucked in a long breath and then dropped her voice. Look, Tony, I know it was you. I know you put my name and address and phone number all over the internet. I wanted to feel proud of myself, but I was still confused and sleep-addled, somehow hoping that Hope was calling to apologize for spreading the rumor, for reading my poems out loud. You have to take it off. What? My name, my picture, my info. You have to take it off the internet, Tony, right now. The shrill tone of her voice cut my fog right down to my anger. Why would I do that? It's not fair. Like you humiliating me in front of the entire school? You dumped me, remember? Her voice was a tight snarl. I was too angry to reconsider, to be taken aback. Voice. And reading the sharp no from Hope. Arguing. A faint scream. The eek of wheels peeling out. And then nothing. Dun dun dun. So I definitely want to open it to questions for you guys, but one thing I do want to start with that I think is a question that doesn't get...
Okay, so, I read the Joy Luck Club, that's Joy Luck. This betrays my age, because I read it when it first came out, and I had never read any book with anybody who wasn't white as the main character. Actually, that's not true. I read The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. I don't know if you ever read that. It takes place in China, but it's written by a white woman, and it's very old. So that made me be like, you can tell these stories about like kids and their parents, and I didn't know that. That was like before young adult even existed. I read a book called...
I have a much thicker skin. I don't. I don't. And for me, I actually get a lot of bad reviews. I do. And the reason for that is my books are for teens. It says it everywhere. You'll find them in the young adult department. The people who review me on Amazon are almost always adults. So, like, I had a 1-star review that someone said, I read this book and it was absolutely juvenile.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, well, the character's 17. And so, for me personally, it just inhibits me. It actually inhibits me to read a good review, too. After my first or second book came out, I got a great, for Publishers Weekly, I got a starred review that was amazing. And I was in the middle of my next book, and it stopped me. It absolutely just choked me up because I felt like, I can't duplicate that. I can't do it. And so for me, I kind of have to write in a vacuum. I have to put my head down. My thing is, I'm here for longevity. I know not everybody's going to like my book. I know that intellectually. However, it's hard to see it in writing because it's you. It's your soul. And you know, God, and the reason why I say I only really try to read professional reviews is because I can generally take a professional review because they will take issue with the writing or a character structure or a story structure that's not okay.
I don't care. You don't fine. That's fine. That's your opinion. But I was like, but I lost a whole star, and I was really sad. And I realized like I don't need to be sad because someone didn't like a particular aspect of my book. I mean, yeah, I know that, and yet I still get sad. Or someone was like, this book was not gay enough.
Okay. When I was querying this book, I queried a ton of agents and got a ton of rejections, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to self-publish it. So I self-published it, and then I was on a panel at San Diego Comic Con, and after the panel, people can come up and talk to you, and this woman comes up and she gives me her card, and she goes, I'm a literary agent, I would love to talk with you, I've heard about your book, blah, 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 and I'm like, oh my god, okay. So I go home, and I'm typing in her email to like follow up on it, and I already have her email in my, and I'm like, how do I already have this woman's email? Oh, I queried her before, and she rejected it. And then when she saw me on a panel or heard about it she said through a blog or something, then suddenly she was interested. So it had nothing to do with me or the book. It had to do with like the letter or how she was feeling that day. Maybe your cat died. I mean, you never know. It's just you can't take it personally because it's not.
It's about creativity and where that comes from. And so it really encouraged me when I feel stuck, don't sit there feeling stuck and be angry at myself. It taught me to like walk away from the project, go for a walk, or switch locations, or change the music I'm listening to, or go eat some junk food, or do something that's not the problem I'm staring at. And by the time I come back from my distraction or my location change, I'm like, oh, I've seen this in a slightly different way, and it helps me to move past the block. Rather, it's kind of like when you're trying to fall asleep at night, and you're like, I'm not sleeping, this is the worst. The worst thing you can do is lie there thinking about how you're not sleeping. The best thing you can do is like, turn on your light, read a book or whatever, and then by the time you're absorbed in your book, you'll start thinking, oh, I'm kind of sleepy after all. So by going away from the problem, you actually
I know when my book is done, because generally, I mean, I write the end and I do the editing, and I generally then send it to my agent with a note that says, I hate this book, get it out of my face. And it's because, I've been married to this book for the last 4 months or whatever, and I'd love to say, like, when I write the end, it makes me feel amazing, but sometimes it's just like, I've been wrestling this book, I just need it out of my face, so I send it to her, and then she sends it back to me like a week or 2 weeks later, and then I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't bad, okay. But once I send it off to the publisher, I'm done. And for me, that's generally because I generally work with multi-book contracts. So once I'm done with a book, I give myself a month, and then I have to start another book. So for me, when I put it to bed, when I've done that edit, it's gone for me.
It is dangerous though when you're self-publishing, because you do have that creative control even after you hit publish. And in theory, like, when I first published this, it could be one book, and I could have gone in and added all kinds of stuff and like still have it look like the same book that people are buying. But it'd actually be kind of funny if I had. But like change the character's name or something. But that is a little bit dangerous, because then you're always tempted to be like, I could go back and change that if I wanted to. But you kind of have to just be zen about it and let things be. To an extent, and in terms of knowing when you're done, yeah, it's like lean away.
and it really resonated with me because you hear a ton of advice in the writing business, and growing up being interested in writing, I remember going to events and just hearing advice thrown around, and this piece of advice I was reminded of is that whatever you hear, any advice that's given to you, take it with this grain of salt. You have to think about what works for you. Because even as you'll see in this panel, all of us have different styles, and we have different ways of working and of nurturing our creativity. So whatever else you hear as a writer, ask yourself, does this work for me? Does this work for my style? Try it, see if it works. But just because another writer does it and they do it successfully, it doesn't mean that that's going to be your style.
Everything that they say, and I was just going to basically do that too. Read everything, even if it's not necessarily your genre or what you like. Try everything. I didn't realize that I loved to read horror because I was never a Stephen King fan. I was never into all of that, like the big horror writers. But I would just read anything, any cover that interested me. I was the kid in the bookstore who was always like, oh, let me just look at this. And I'd have, 40 books at the bookstore, the library, or whatever. And so if somebody says, like, oh, what genre do you like? And I'm like, all of them. So reading, always read. And my two things, read everything and do everything. If you're in my class, you know that I do a lot in terms of knife fighting and sword fighting and getting kidnapped and kind of stuff. There's no adventure. There's no adventure that you can't uncover. And sitting behind, a laptop or whatever, you get to conjure those adventures, and it's kind of amazing. So,
it can get really discouraging, but don't give up. Just keep whatever flame it is that got you started. Just nurture that and keep it burning. And the other one is to be unafraid. Write unafraid, and that's going to push you, or maybe even write afraid, but write despite that fear, and that will push you into great things.